But Joe, I really, again, I want to thank you and your office for all that you've done to help our domestic violence victims. I often think of them as, and again, maybe to help our viewers relate that this really does happen in our wonderful community here. Can you give us an example of a case here in DuPage?
Well, for your viewers, I think the case of Jane Kelly is the one that people will associate and recall. It's a case that happened in 1991. Jane Kelly was a beautiful woman. She was a successful businesswoman who had been involved in a very troubled marriage with a guy named James Kelly. He was a vice president of Merrill Lynch in Chicago, a very successful businessman, but he had been involved in a very abusive relationship. Married Jane, they had 3 beautiful children. She had orders of protection against him, 3 complaints to the police over the years. She had been punched in the face, thrown downstairs, spat upon. She finally broke the relationship, filed for divorce, got her order of protection, and moved her family, her children, to Naperville to get away from him. Well, that wasn't good enough for James Kelly. The evidence at trial showed that he stalked her and ultimately finally hired 3 men to kill her, and we believe the evidence showed that he actually took her life on September 3rd of 1991. But by all appearances, Jim Kelly was a successful businessman who was a churchgoer, gave back to his community, was a coach, coached a soccer team. Jane was a successful businesswoman. These 2 people had it all. But behind closed doors, at home, it was just one violent episode after another. And that's a typical, it's not typical, but those are the kinds of cases that we see. Yeah. So it affects every type of family, affluent families, right, lower income families, and right, sometimes obviously alcohol is a big part of it. In the Kelly case, alcohol was not. We're looking at doing a better job with substance abuse cases and people who are under the influence of alcohol when they commit acts of domestic violence. So, you know, there are a lot of different dynamics that come into play.
Yeah.
So I think that brings up a point that alcohol doesn't cause domestic
Right.
violence,
Correct.
but it lowers people's inhibitions to do things that
Right.
they might not do if they were sober.
Right,
It can
they lack the
often
control.
make a really bad situation worse.
Worse.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, you know, I'd like to take this opportunity to take a quick break because I want to come back in the next segment and follow up a little bit with Judge Sexton and with Amy Milligan from the Family Shelter Services and talk more in depth about things that we should be looking out for and things that we can do to protect ourselves in the future. Thank you. Please stay with us and we'll be right back.
Do you need guidance on a foreclosure or bankruptcy matter? Have you been hurt at work or suffered a personal injury? Do you need help filing for a divorce? The Lawyer Referral Service is a public service of the DuPage County Bar Association. Please call us from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday at 630-653-9109. Se habla español. To access the service online, log on to www.dcba.org and click on Find a Lawyer.
Don't take money, don't take fame, don't need no credit card to ride this train.
You're killing me, Lubeck. You gonna tell me you didn't see that stop sign back there?
Mr. Bellner, my high school driver's ed teacher, I thought you were...
I told you that if I ever found out you were driving like a bonehead, I'd haunt you. So, boo and whatnot. 10 and 2, son.
What's the big deal anyway? I mean, nobody was even near that intersection.
That one of those optional stop signs? Did it say stop and then in parentheses, only when Lubeck deems it so?
No.
Bonehead. Looks like I'm gonna have to ride shotgun for a while. Where are we headed?
Visit my sister downstate.
Ooh, long trip. Good thing I brought some tunes. You do like banjo music, don't you, Lubeck? We gotta make another pit stop here.
I thought you were a ghost.
Doesn't work that way.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Susan Alvarado, and we're here again this evening to talk about the very important issue of domestic violence. I'd like at this time to turn to Amy Milligan from the DuPage County Family Services Shelter. Family Shelter Services. I do apologize.
It's all right.
Amy, thank you for joining us again this
Happy
evening.
to be here. Thank you.
I know last time we met, we talked about some of the services that your organization offers, and I'd actually like to pick up where we left off. I think that many of our viewers have indicated an interest in knowing, you know, as Joe said earlier, what happens if I have this little voice, this intuition
Right.
that, you know, I don't know, this is the only relationship I've known.
Right.
So what happens if they pick up the phone and call your shelter and say, can I talk to someone? How do you handle that?
Yeah. Well, I think first it's really important to say that we do have a 24-hour hotline that runs every day of the year, and it's answered by trained counselors. And we get many calls on the hotline from people who aren't sure if what they're experiencing is abuse.
Right.
They aren't sure if they are eligible for any kind of services or what kind of supports are out there, and that really is what the hotline is there for. And in addition to that, all of our services are free and confidential. So what that means is that if someone wants to call and they want to give us a fake name, they don't want to give us a name at all,
Oh,
they just want to
interesting.
call and get information, that's absolutely fine. They can do that.
Great. You know, one thing that I think about often is what happens if someone is worried about the impact of this phone call on the husband or the boyfriend, or even if it's the husband or boyfriend being abused, on the other party's work, or
Right.
what if they don't want the other party to know? How confidential is this?
Extremely confidential.
Okay, so
the
that's-
state statutes require us to protect the confidentiality of all of our clients, even after they have died. I mean, so
Okay.
even someone passing away doesn't eliminate their confidentiality. But again, if people are concerned about that, they can absolutely call anonymously. But our interest is not to tell victims what to do. Our interest is not to involve them in doing any particular activity that they don't want to do. Our interest is in helping them identify what will be most conducive to their safety for their specific situation. And they're really the best people to tell us what that is, and we can help them identify options. So-
Great. Does your office then sometimes work in conjunction with the state's attorney's office?
Absolutely,
Is
yes.
that
We
right?
have an office, our advocacy office at the courthouse works in conjunction with the state's attorney's office. They have some victim advocates. We have victim advocates. We assist, both offices assist with orders of protection. Our office does primarily civil orders of protection where there have been no arrests or the police have not been involved, whereas the state's attorney's office is doing orders of protection that are primarily associated with criminal cases where there's
Right.
been an arrest.
Right.
So we work very closely with one another. We make referrals back and forth, and obviously to make sure that everybody who's experiencing domestic violence is getting the full range of services, not just necessarily court services, but shelter, counseling, support for their kids, whatever they need.
That's great. And I think it's very important to note that not only is it confidential, it's also free of charge,
Free.
isn't it?
Every service that we provide is completely free of charge.
How are you funded, Amy, how is your organization funded?
We have a variety of funding sources, some of which are from the state, federal, and local and county government. We are funded in part by United Way dollars, but we're largely funded by the support of the community. So individual donors, foundations, corporations, faith communities.
I see.
We rely very heavily on donations from the community to keep our services going.
So I think it's critically important then for our viewers to understand that if they have any questions, they can actually contact Family Shelter Services
That's right.
and have questions answered. Is that
Yes,
right?
That's right. And I'll give our hotline number,
Yes,
which
please
is
do.
630-469-5650. And again, that's a 24-hour number. And they can ask questions over the phone. We run every other week a domestic violence education series where people can come in and just get, again, kind of what we call domestic violence 101, basic information about kinds of behaviors that are involved in abusive relationships, information about orders of protection, information about counseling options, and all of those services are available, again, through our hotline.
Can you give us a thumbnail sketch of your